Okay, page 885, Ches. You ready? Alle inyanim vom Welt. All things that happen in the world, or that are going to happen in the world, seien abhängig von Jiden. Depends on the Jewish people. In other words, God created the world, period. God created the world with a purpose, period. That purpose is Torah Mitzvahs, period. The practitioners, the enactors, and ultimately the proliferators of Torah Mitzvahs are the Jewish people. We have responsibility not just to ourselves, but to the whole world, because that's what God gave us. The Torah, the responsibility that comes along with it. Durch dem, was a Yid poilt, an Inyan bei sich, when a Jew manages to have an effect as it relates to him personally, right now in the context of this conversation, when you have a job to do and you have resistance, don't run away, don't go back into slavery, don't even fight, and don't even pray. Do your job. That's the message of the Sikh. So the Rebbe says, when we do what we need to do, it creates a certain atmosphere in the world. This affects the whole world. By the way, I think about the Rebbe a lot. I obviously think about the Rebbe a lot. I can't imagine a chassid who doesn't. And I think about the Friedrich Rebbe a lot. And you know what I always come back to? To be the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you need infinite faith. You have to really believe that God's going to win to do this. You have to really believe in Mashiach. You dedicate your whole life to fight with the whole world. And how much do you win? Huh? Forget about Goyim. There's 16 million Jews in the world. Yeah, how many of them have become frum in the last 60 or 70 years? There's a trend, there's a direction, there's a tendency that's picking up speed. Every year there are more Baalei Teshuva than the year before. There's going to come a time in the near future when being frum is going to be the in thing. No one's saying you have to be far frum, fanatic frum, but people, reform and conservative, which are falling apart, are going to say, you know what, let's do more. Let's keep Shabbos, let's keep kosher, let's keep mikvah, let's put film. But when the Rebbe started, it was one person a year. So you have to take on a task, right, as the Rebbe would say, that the Eibishter gives you, and believe that this is true, and this is going to win against impossible odds, against all odds. Why? If it's true, it's going to win. I just got to believe, and move, and move, and move. Shlichus is now 75 years old, close to 80 years old. And you see how popular Shlichus is, how successful Shlichus is. We don't begin to understand how difficult it was for the first Shluchim. Because they were the Rebbe's arms and legs. And just like the Rebbe needed an enormous amount of faith, I spent a Shabbos 2 weeks ago in the Chabad Chod Lubavitcher Center in Philadelphia. It's the oldest building that was built specifically for Chabad outreach, not as a school. And the overseer of this Sichos is Rabbi Shem Tov, who's the head of Agudas Chabad. I spent the whole Shabbos with him, had a wonderful time. And he told me a story. In those days, there was no product. You didn't know what to do. You went on Shlichus. What are you going to do? Today you go on Shlichus. You're going to make a mami and me. You're going to make a lunch and learn. You're going to make a shofar factory. You're going to make a matzah factory. I mean, there's so many ideas that have been flushed out. There was nothing. They were all creating everything. And every time I would say to Rabbi Shem Tov the word create, he get very upset. It's not creating, it's doing our mandate. So he says he was the first Chabad Shliach who had the idea of making an art show. And he told me the story of this art show. The details are not important. The bottom line is he scheduled his art show and he brought in artists and he brought in art and he was snowed in. There was so much snow you couldn't walk in the street. Okay? So he canceled it, they made another date. Came the second date, guess what happened? Snowed in. But so much so you couldn't walk the street. He says, I couldn't cancel it because there's no other dates. 4 people showed up. He says, from those 4 people, one of them became incredibly involved with the Rebbe, and Poshet acted as the Rebbe's liaison in certain areas of geopolitics. He said, if the room had been full, I would never met this man. But I'm thinking, for heaven's sakes, I don't understand. Eibishter, he's trying to do something good. Today I asked to snow. Today I asked to snow. You know, we always know in Crown Heights, the most beautiful day of the year is the Labor Day parade. For heaven's sakes. I'm like, baby, it's pouring. Eibishter, what's going on? Where's the justice? You know? It's a standing joke. It really is. It's a standing joke. It's one of those ambivalent truths. You're doing the Rebbe's work, and if something could go wrong, it will. They used to call it World War II, a snafu, situation normal, all fouled up. If something can go wrong, it's gonna go wrong. And of course the answer is, you're not just resisting what you think, you're just forces of Klippa that are standing in your way. And you got to push, and you got to push. I'm not sure that every time a Chabad Shliach makes an art show today, it snows. But he was the first. So he was creating, he was representing the Rebbe. If you represent the Rebbe, not only you have the schus, you got to deal with the opposition. So what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? Keep moving. Keep moving. I can't do it. I want to jump into the sea. I want to go back into slavery. I want to stand and fight. Keep moving. Keep moving. Now it's 70 years later, 80 years later, you see the success, and we're not even seeing the success yet. The success is going to be when modern secular Jews just embrace that being Jewish is keeping Shabbos and kosher and mikveh and tefillin. It's going to happen. Why? Because the Rebbe 80 years ago believed this is what Hashem needs right now, and we're going to give him what he needs, and we're going to push, 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 and we're going to get there. And it's very difficult when you're not Moshe Rabbeinu to hold on to that faith. So you stay connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Rebbe here says this is the whole world. It starts with a Yid resisting one Jew. His name was Avram Avinu. Resisting the status quo. There is the way of the world. There's what they call normal, what they call acceptable, within the parameters of the community. In academic circles, they have a terminology called community. If you're a physicist, you belong to a community, and the community has their own dialogue, and you have to speak the language of the community. Anybody who says things that are outside of the parameters of what's acceptable in the community, it's like being a blasphemous. It's like being an apocatist. Physicists, chemists, biologists, doctors, social scientists, historians will occasionally make a proposal that's not acceptable to the community. It's outside of what's considered acceptable today. So they make fun of him, they throw him out, and then 5 years later they embrace him and they give him a Nobel Prize if he sticks it out, because he's right. But you have to fight City Hall. So the Rebbe says everything real, the terminology that we're using is the freedom of self-possession, of self-ownership, which is what a human being was meant to achieve, begins by being given a mandate and sticking to that mandate, not being distracted, going forward, pushing. Okay? So the Rebbe says it starts with one Yid, and then it affects the whole world. Let's keep reading. Der Funes verstandig. This therefore makes the point. As der Uftu von der Vayiso. This idea that Moshe says, and the Jews follow, instead of looking for a tact of engaging with their enemy, they move forward. Or die Svaris, for die Dalet Gittis, against the theories of these four groups, is nit nor mitzad Eloi beho avoida. It isn't only because it's what the job requires, nor oich mitzadam Eloi be'adam ha'ovid. It's what's needed for you. When you are given a job, the job is very important, but the jobber is important. You're important. Your place in it is a part of the task. And this is true of shlichus. Think about shluchim. Shluchim are regular people who, by the result of the life that they've chosen, have become super people, special people, amazing people. Like I said, I was in Chicago Monday night. I sat in someone's home, met a Fabrengen, and they talked about the Visach. Everyone loves Chabad. So I said to this lady, I said to her, I don't even know why I need to tell this to you. I said, I just want you to know. Chabad rabbis and rebbitzes are no different than anybody else. But we have a different Rebbe. And I said to her, he loved people. He loved the Jews so much and so unconditionally that he got us to love a little bit also. I said, I don't know why it's so important to me. Whenever people talk about Chabad, I need to tell you, I need to say, Chabad rabbis and rebbitzins, they open up their homes. They just open their hearts to strangers, and they get taken advantage of it all the time. It's not fun to be a giver. And they only do it because they have a Rebbe who gave his whole essence away. He didn't keep anything for himself. Not a minute, not an ounce, not a thought, everything he gave. That's That was the beacon of light, which never left the forefront. You know, the place where the two eyes converge on a single point with proper focus. And there was so much that Shluchim embraced. I'm going to go to a place, I'm going to meet strangers, I'm going to be nice to them, even if they're so obnoxious. I'm going to be nice to them. Why? Because that's what the Rebbe does. So the Rebbe says, doing this trip of going towards the mission, this phenomena of the splitting of the sea, which means that a clarity is achieved. Yeah, you're fighting against the world. You're fighting against the status quo. You're fighting against the way the world defines itself to create a new definition. Now, of course, the way we would say it is that the world should go out of its own self-imposed slavery and free itself from the shackles of mediocrity and conservatism in terms of being bold and initiatives of goodness and righteousness and correctness. And you're fighting, you're resisting against the world, and then the sea splits. You have help, you have clarity. The Rebbe says it doesn't only happen in the world, it happens in the heart and the mind of the person who's pushing, who's resisting. Die behaltene Göttlichkeit von sein Nefesh, the hidden divinity within his soul, kumt haraus legili, emerges in a revealed state. Ubemele tut sich auf kriyas yamsuf. Consequently, the sea splits euch and welt in the world at large. In other words, it starts within the person, and then it radiates from the person to his environment. It radiates from the person to the world around himself. So the Rebbe says, you split your own sea, and you make it possible for the sea around you to split as well. Die vier svaras, these four ideas, kommen von dem Seichel, come from the intelligence, von the Anshiakitis, from people. Individual people came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Moshe, the enemy is in pursuit. Let's jump into the sea. Let's run away. They came to Moshe Rabbeinu and they said, Moshe, the enemy is in pursuit. Let's capitulate. They came to Moshe and they said, Moshe, the enemy is in pursuit. Let's turn around and fight. They came to Moshe and they said, the enemy is in pursuit. Let's talk to God and ask him to redeem us. And Moshe said, move. Move. Go. And the sea splits. At the Rebbe, first it split in the hearts of the people who followed Moshe's initiative, and then it split in the world at large. Die Svaris, die vier Svaris, kommen von dem Seichel, von der Anshiakitis. These four ideas come from the mind of the members of these four groups. Aber if the Svara von Vayiso, the theory, the idea of doing what Moshe Rabbeinu said, hat sich keiner nicht gehabt. No one thought of that idea. They was asking a simple question. Yidden saw Egypt, right? And everything that Egypt represented. So one group said, let's run away. One group said, let's go back in. One group said, let's fight. One group said, let's dive in. Why didn't one group say, let's go? Why didn't Moshe have to say go? Why didn't the Yidden, they were using their own minds, say, let's keep going. We have a job. Let's keep moving. Says the Rebbe, bis Moshe Rabbeinu has gesagt. Until Moshe said it. And more, even Moshe Rabbeinu in dem Eibishten's Namen. Even Moshe doesn't say it on his own initiative. Moshe says it because God said go. Right? Turn the page. We're now on page 886, okay? And the Rebbe explains, why didn't any of the Yidden come up with this notion? Why didn't any of the Jewish people think of this idea? So the Rebbe says, A Seder Avoida, was legt sich on kein Haravanya, or sein Seichel, an approach to service that makes sense to the human mind without any hard work. Und hat in dem achayes, and he has an excitement about this. Ken man nicht sein sicher, there's no way to know for sure. Sie das kommt von Nefesh Elokis oder von Teva Nefesh Abamis. Whether it's coming from your godly soul, it's coming from your animal soul. If you have an issue, and you try to find a solution rationally, and it's a rational solution which not only makes sense, but it's comfortable, you never know if it's right or wrong. When you come to a Yid and you give him a task, and it's unnatural to him, it's not what he thinks, is mashma as as kum to im. Then you can be assured It seems that it's coming from heaven. And again, I want to go back to the Shlichus model. I could tell you 1,000 stories, but listen to this Maisi, yeah? Rabbi Shlomo Kunin from California, one of his earliest shluchim, was Lazan Gezud, together with his Balabaste, Mark Yom V'Shanim Zayin. He went on Shlichus over 50 years ago. He went on Shlichus before I was born, in 1965. And the Federation tried to destroy him. Mamish. If you want to read a good book on Lubavitch, and you don't mind politics, you should read The Secret of Chabad by Rabbi Eliezer. It's not a book about the Rebbe, it's a book about Shluchim. And he beats up on the establishment like you've never seen. But it'll make you so proud. The Nukud is, he talks about everywhere Lubavitch went, anybody who could stop them did. Lubavitch was fighting everybody. And they just kept hitting their head against the wall. Now they want to be our friends. There are certain places in the world where Chabad has so much influence that any time anybody wants to do anything and he wants people to show up, they ask Chabad to partner. These are the same people who for decades, did everything in their power to destroy Chabad. Rabbi Kunin, they attacked him personally. They accused him of a crime and they wanted to destroy his credibility. And he showed how the whole thing was a libel. It was mamish hamesida. And he wrote the Rebbe a letter that I'm going to destroy whatever organization it was, one of the most prominent organizations of Jews in California. I'm going to bring him down because they tried to destroy me. And the Rebbe said, don't do it. Quote, maybe one day you'll get favors from them. He still hasn't gotten any favors from them. But the Rebbe didn't let him destroy him. They tried to destroy you. You won. Move on. Now, Rabbi Kunin, when that story happened, was probably not even 30 years old. Rabbi Kunin today is a lion. You know what he was when he was less than 30? He was a tank. He had so much fight in him. He's such an aggressive man. And the Rebbe says, leave him be. It was completely unnatural to him. And what was the Rebbe saying? You have a mission. Is this a part of your mission, to punish them for trying to destroy you? They're terrible. They really are terrible. They did a terribly sick and evil thing. And that's their business. But is going to fight them and destroy them have anything to do with why you were sent on this shlichus? No, don't do it. And this happens to shluchim again and again and again, where they have such a hard time getting anything done. And when they want to gloat, the Rebbe says, forget the gloating, move on. To work for the Rebbe in those years, it was very personal. The Rebbe used to speak to these people on a daily basis, through Rabbi Chadakot, on a daily basis. He sent them all over the world. He never, ever made them feel. He was so in touch with them. And in those years, it was so hard. Wherever Chabad came, the officialdom came to Chabad and said, you are not welcome. You are not welcome. And Chabad said, we didn't ask. We're here. You'll either get... What did he tell them? He told them at that time, he says, this is a moving train. You get on the train, you get out of the way, or you get run over. Those are three choices. I could see Rabbi Kunin saying it today, but then, he was a lion. He was a lion. You understand? And the Rebbe held them in check. The Rebbe made shluchim always keep their eye on the prize. The prize is move forward. It was so hard. It was so difficult. Everything took so much effort. Now you're looking at it 50, 60 years later. It's cool to be a shliach. It wasn't cool. It wasn't even cool. I was in a Chabad house and a woman said to me, when I was growing up on shlichus, we used to come to Crown Heights and people used to look down on us. Could you imagine shluchim bringing their children to Crown Heights and they felt out of place? Could you imagine? I mean, today, shluchim are so, there are heroes. They're on a pedestal. It wasn't always that way. She said to me, my mother used to say shluchim, like shlochs. If you were a shliach, you were less than. Could you imagine? I'm talking about Lubavitch, not about the Welt. And the Rebbe said, keep your eye on the prize, keep your eye on the prize, keep your eye on the prize, keep your eye on the prize. And the Rebbe kept his eye on the prize. Yeah? So the Rebbe says, when it doesn't make sense, then it's usually right. If it sits right, we're not sure. And the proof is, Yidden come to Moshe Rabbeinu to solutions to a problem, and nobody gets it right. Because the solutions that they came up with made sense to them. And they had one constant. You have an enemy, deal with him. And the Rebbe said, who's talking about enemies? Do your job. The enemies will take care of themselves. Was mehr ihm will sich nie der Sort avoiden, and the less desirable that tact of war, of service is to you, als mehr Reihe is es, that's more proof. As das is the avoda versus negates in biyuchad. It's if you don't want to do it and it doesn't sit right with you, that's the proof that it's your geschäft, it's your business. Was the Rebbe macht of the Yetzirah verschiedene Anstrengungen, the Yetzirah therefore concocts, Yetzirah therefore fabricates all kinds of resistances. As the avoda zalamon kuman am shversen, that should be very difficult for you. And the Rebbe says the proof is the Medrash tells us the Yidden are facing Mitzrayim. And not one Jew got it right, except Moshe, with direct instructions from the Eibishter. The Yidden all came up with logical, workable solutions. And the Rebbe says, usually, it's not right. Usually, it's not right. You move forward, you move forward, you move forward. Okay. Und das ist der Bier, page 886, second column. This is the explanation from them. Was durch der Aveda von Vayiso, when you do the work of journeying, was durch der Aveda von Vayiso, tut sich auf Kriyas Yamsef benafshe. You have to create a sitting of the sea in yourself. In other words, you as a person have to achieve, you have to go over from this side to the other side. You have to go from this side, from approaching your work like a person, to going over to the side of doing your work like a representative of Hashem. And something has to happen in your head and in your heart, that you don't have a worldly paradigm, you have a God paradigm. And it has to happen to each shliach, to each individual separately. And this is the splitting of the sea, so to speak. Yeder Yid bepnimiyas nafshe, each Jew in his heart of hearts, in the innermost parts of his soul, had der bittel zum ratzon ha'elyon, has the required bittel to the will of Hashem. Man nitvas the menschliche teva, this human nature, and there's the norm, there's the median, there's the paradigm of acceptability in this civilization, this society. Gewohnheiten, habits, und seichel, and logical arguments, verstellen auf them. They obscure, they block the clarity which is Hashem. Is b'shas geht avek von sein Mitzrayim alles weiter. When you as an individual depart from your own Egypt, you distance yourself from the way you relate to the world that is worldly. Rechnet sich nicht mit seinen eigenen Inyonim. He ceases, or she ceases, to reckon with her own personal ideas and attitudes. Und sich mevatel zum Ratzon ha'elyon, one submits to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wer dann es gala pnimiyas nafshe, the inner neshama of a Yid emerges, and it's called Kriyas Yamsef ben nafshe. It's a personal splitting of the sea. So the Rebbe says the splitting of the sea represents clarity. You see God in the world. The splitting of the sea means clarity, yeah? The clarity is that you see Hashem in the world. That's what it means. The splitting of the sea means you see the Eibishter, and then you approach it differently. So the Rebbe says for that to happen in your environment, it has to happen in the person. Every shliach, what do they call it? You're not allowed to say that word. You become initiated by fire. You know, soldiers go to war. Yeah, soldiers go to war. Some die, unfortunately, and some survive. But there's a basic divide. A soldier who's seen conflict and a soldier who hasn't. Until you've been in an actual battle and bullets were flying, it's all academic. You experience it once. You're a new person. I can't say the word. It's the way a person becomes a Christian. It starts with a B. By fire. That's what they call it. You are not a soldier till you've been experienced bullets. Because you're another person. You know what being a soldier means, huh? You know what being a soldier means? Bullets fly and you don't back away. You stand there. That's a soldier. That's why it's about discipline. Think about that. Think, bullets are flying, and unless your commander says retreat, you stand and fight until you fall. And someone stands in your place. That something happens to you. You become a soldier. The Rebbe says for a Yid to appreciate the message of Moshe Rabbeinu, stop fighting with the enemy, move forward. The sea can't split in the world around you. The sea has to first split in your own heart. Because only when the sea splits do you think like Moshe Rabbeinu. And then you can live your life in a way which affects the splitting of the sea and the environment around you. Und durch dem, and when a Yid successfully achieves within himself, this Kriyas Yamsef, going over from this side to the other side, werd euch nesgal der Elikus, was is far behalten in Welt. Then, subsequent to that, the godliness of the world shows itself, and you see that this was the right path all along. My brother Mendy, one of my brothers, sent to the family WhatsApp. My family has a separate WhatsApp for the shluchim, that they communicate between themselves, because they have different things to discuss. And then there's a family group. So my brother Mendy put up an article from a Reform rabbi, a very proud conservative rabbi, and he said, the headline was, isn't Chabad doing that already? Isn't Chabad doing that already? And the article begins with him saying, I don't agree with Chabad on anything, except the tactic. If we are going to remain viable as a movement, they haven't yet admitted that they're done. The conservative reform movements basically have these big, beautiful temples. All they got to do is kosher their kitchens, put up mechitzas, get rid of the microphones, and close the parking lots for Shabbos and Yom Tif. There's plenty of guys in Koil looking for work, and their shuls will prosper. Prosper. That's all. There's no religious. You have to just bring in a Chabad couple and let them do their magic. So he doesn't say that. I'm saying that. He says we have to keep the conservative movement going. It's falling to pieces. He says, but it's not going to survive unless we take a play out of the Chabad playbook. And he gives example after example after example after example. And he explains why it doesn't happen in their world. A conservative rabbi gets paid 4 times what a Chabad rabbi gets paid. But the idea of inviting a family of his parishioners to sit at his Friday night table, foreign. It's not part of the contract. He said, we have to invite people into our homes. You have a shul, make chicken soup and kugel, and bring the people who come to temple to your house on a Friday night. Chabad is doing it. And he wants to and of course, the point is, to do what Chabad does, you got to be Chabad. Because it's so sacrificial. You can't imitate Chabad. You can't. Because it involves Mesiras Nefesh. No one's ready for that. They all understand what Chabad is doing. They just don't appreciate how hard it is. You can't open up your home and your heart to another person unless you're prepared to give everything. And this is the blank by fire. This is what the Rebbe said. This is the Kriyas Yamsuf on yourself, which sets up the Kriyas Yamsuf in your environment. From a halachic point of view, it's very sensitive. From a Pekuach Nefesh point of view, it's a no-brainer. But it's tough, because the Shulchan Aruch has rules. It's very tough. I know shluchim who are careful about not people driving to shul on Shabbos, and then there's shluchim who don't even think about it. It's just this what goes on. People drive to shul. A Yid was in the Rebbe's room by Yechidus. And the Rebbe said to him, you have a very close friend who's clean-shaven. I want you to encourage him to grow a beard. He says, sure. As soon as I walk out, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call him and say, the Rebbe said that you should grow a beard. He says, no, don't tell him I said. So he says to the Rebbe, why shouldn't I tell the Rebbe that you said? So the Rebbe says, I have a beard on my own face. If he grows a beard because I said so, then I'll have another beard in his face. I don't need 2 beards. I need one, and he needs one. But if he's going to grow a beard because I tell him to grow a beard, then it's not his beard, it's my beard. So this fellow calls up his friend and says, I think you should grow a beard. And he gets very upset. He says, listen, I'm a personal friend of the Rebbe's. I do work for the Rebbe. And I'm involved with the Rebbe. If the Rebbe wanted me to grow a beard, he would tell me so. And he didn't tell me. So don't you be more religious than the Rebbe and tell me I need to grow a beard. And he bit his lip. And he didn't say, well, the Rebbe told me I should tell you to grow a beard. Then he nudged and he nudged and he nudged. Because the beard's got to be on your own face. Moshe is a leader. But we have to follow. Follow, not just do what he does. Follow means learn his lesson and move. Right? Biz, as v'nikol kved Hashem, v'ro kupas yachter pi Hashem di, but then you see Hashem in the whole world. That's the end of the Sicha. That's the end of the Sicha. It's a wonderful Sicha, and it makes such very, very, very real and important points. Does anybody want to make any comments or any questions? Because I'm chopping at the bit. I just want to start the next one. I don't know why, but I want to give you the next piece of paper, and we have 5 minutes, but I just want to start. Does anybody want to say anything? You want to translate in French? I love your French. One of the things that's happened over the course of the evolution of Shlichus, the first people who went on Shlichus, you know what their qualification was? They were very chassidish. They were very dedicated to the Rebbe. Some of them were very, very pie in the sky. They were not practical. They were not talented. They didn't have the gift of oratory. They didn't have the gift of fundraising. They didn't have the gift of organization. They didn't have social skills. They were not social people. They were book people. So they went out and did shlichus, and they did it so clumsily. As time passes, and shlichus went from being weird to being sacrificial to being in vogue to being popular to being cool. The guys going on shlichus today, they're very talented. They're the guys and the girls. They know how to do it. They're just good at it. So these young guys sweep into town and they super exceed their predecessors in a relatively speaking short. They have the skills, yeah. But the ones who went first, they're the generals. Those are the Bali Mesidas Nefesh. They had the most important quality of all. They did what they were told. And the people who back then had all the talents, went into business or became educators, they didn't want to be on the front lines. So that's really the story. It's not the same thing going on shlichus today as going on shlichus 50 years ago. I'm not saying it doesn't matter as much, but the Mesidas Nefesh of the early shluchim it's really, really indescribable. It's indescribable. You can't imagine what it was.